It started, like most bad things do, on an utterly ordinary Tuesday. The sky over the Chesapeake Bay was the color of a dirty pearl, and a low, grumbling fog clung to the water, swallowing the horizon. I was driving my girlfriend Liana back to her apartment in Virginia Beach after a weekend visiting my parents in Delaware. The car was filled with the comfortable silence of a long drive, the hum of the tires on the asphalt, and the faint, sweet scent of her perfume. Something with vanilla and sandalwood that always made me think of warm skin. I glanced over at her. She was asleep, her head tilted against the window. The gray light softened the sharp, perfect line of her jaw and caught the gloss on her parted lips. A strand of her dark hair had fallen across her cheek, and I had the sudden, overwhelming urge to reach over and brush it away, to feel the warmth of her skin under my thumb. My eyes drifted down, to the way her simple white t-shirt stretched taut over her chest, rising and falling with each slow breath. The seatbelt cut between her breasts, accentuating their shape, and I felt a familiar low pull of desire, mixed with a strange protective tenderness. It was a feeling that was both simple and complicated, a constant undercurrent since we'd started dating 6 months ago. We were approaching the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel, a 23-mile monster of engineering that always made me feel small and exposed. I nudged her gently. Liana, we're at the bridge. She stirred, her long lashes fluttering open. Already? Her voice was sleep-thick and husky. She stretched, a slow feline movement that made the hem of her shirt ride up, exposing a pale strip of her stomach above the waistband of her jeans. I forced my eyes back to the road, my knuckles tightening on the steering wheel. Time to pay the toll, I said, pulling into the lane for the automated booth. I rolled down the window, the damp, salty air rushing in, and inserted my credit card. The machine whirred and clicked. The gate arm lifted, and as I pulled forward onto the first low-slung bridge, the digital display on the toll reader flashed its usual benign message. Safe travels. Then, the text changed. It didn't flash the time or the temperature like it normally does. The letters were the same stark, white on black, but the words they formed made my brain stutter. Asterisk asterisk safe travels asterisk asterisk 11:14 a.m. October 12. I actually laughed, a short, sharp bark of disbelief. I must have misread it. It was a glitch. A stupid, random glitch. Liana, now more awake, was fiddling with the radio. What's so funny? Nothing, I said, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror as if I could still see the sign. The sign it said, October 12th. She shrugged, not looking up from the static-filled search for a decent station. So, it's the 14th. Their software probably needs an update. Yeah, I said, but the word felt hollow. Probably. Because October 12th wasn't just a random date. It was the date of my last dentist appointment. Dr. Albright, 11:00 a.m. I'd been there just last week, sitting in that mint green chair, listening to the high-pitched whine of the drill as he filled the cavity. I'd looked at the clock on the wall as I was leaving, relieved it was over. 11:14 a.m. The coincidence was so specific, so bizarre, it felt like a physical tap on the shoulder from the universe, but I shoved the feeling down. Liana was right. It was a glitch. A meaningless, digital hiccup on a foggy Tuesday. We were about halfway across the bridge tunnel complex, descending into the first of the 2 underwater tunnels, when I saw him. The Thimble Shoal Tunnel is a long, brightly lit tube, its tiled walls echoing with the roar of engines. In the opposing lane, a car was passing us. It was an old, boxy sedan, a color that might have once been tan but was now faded to the hue of dried bone. The driver was the only occupant. He was looking straight at me, not a glance, not a casual look at the car passing by. He was turned in his seat, his head craned, his eyes locked on mine. He was pale, with a gaunt face and hair so blonde it was almost white, cut short and neat. He wore a simple dark jacket. There was no expression on his face. Not anger, not curiosity. Nothing. It was the blankness of it that was so arresting. As our cars sped past each other in that enclosed, roaring space, his gaze held mine for a full 2, maybe 3 seconds. Felt like an hour. Then he was gone, swallowed by the tunnel behind us. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. Did you see that? I asked Liana, my voice tighter than I intended. See what? She said, finally landing on a classic rock station. The opening chords of a Led Zeppelin song filled the car. That GUY.in the oncoming lane that he was just staring. She leaned forward, peering into the side mirror. I don't see anyone. Probably just some weirdo. People do weird things on long drives. She settled back into her seat, one hand tapping the rhythm on her thigh. Her fingers were long and slender, her nails painted a deep blood red that I found myself staring at the delicate bones of her wrist, the way her calf muscle flexed as her foot tapped. The normalcy of her, the sheer physical presence of her, should have been a comfort, but it felt like a stark, bright screen against which the memory of that man's empty face was projected, dark and sharp, that I tried to shake it off. We emerged from the tunnel back onto the bridge, the world opening up again into flat, gray water and sky. The fog was thicker now, a rolling bank that deadened sound. I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see that bone-colored sedan behind us, but there was only the usual stream of traffic. We stopped at the gift shop and restaurant on the man-made island at the midpoint of the crossing. I needed to move to get out of the car, to feel solid ground under my feet. The air was cold and wet, smelling of salt and diesel. Liana linked her arm with mine as we walked towards the building, her body warm against my side. You're still thinking about that guy, aren't you? She said, her tone gently teasing. It was just intense, I admitted. She squeezed my arm. My big, strong man, scared of a little staring contest. She grinned up at me, and in that moment, with the wind whipping her hair around her face and her eyes crinkling at the corners, she was so breathtakingly beautiful it almost hurt. I wanted to kiss her, to lose myself in the taste of her mouth, the feel of her body pressed against mine. The desire was a hot, urgent flare, a desperate attempt to burn away the cold unease that had taken root in my gut. We got coffees and stood by the railing looking out at the churning water. Ships, ghostly in the fog, slid silently past. I was about to suggest we head back to the car when I saw him again. He was standing about 50 yards away, near the far end of the parking lot, just beside a large informational sign about the bridge's history. He wasn't looking at the sign, he was looking at us. The same man, the same pale, expressionless face, the same dark jacket. My blood went cold. Liana, I said, my voice a low whisper. She followed my gaze. Oh, what? That's him. He was going the other way, I said, the logic of it feeling like a trap snapping shut. Northbound. How is he here? Maybe he turned around? There's a turnaround for maintenance vehicles, isn't there? She offered, but her voice had lost its playful edge. She was frowning. He didn't move. He just stood there, a still point in the slow movement of tourists and travelers. Then he raised one hand. Not a wave. It was a slow, deliberate gesture, his palm facing us, fingers slightly spread. He held it for a moment, then lowered his arm, turned and walked away, disappearing behind the low-slung restaurant building. Okay, that was seriously creepy, Liana murmured, pulling her jacket tighter around herself. Let's go, now. We practically jogged back to the car. I fumbled with the keys, my hands shaking slightly. As I started the engine, I looked over at the passenger seat. Liana had pulled her legs up, hugging her knees. The position tightened the fabric of her jeans across her thighs, and I had a sudden, unbidden image of my hand on her leg, feeling the muscle tense under my palm. The thought was so vivid, so inappropriate given the circumstances, that I felt a flush of guilt. My mind was fracturing. The normal parts of me, the parts that found my girlfriend attractive, that worried about being late for work, were at war with this new crawling sensation of dread. The rest of the drive was tense and quiet. The fog clung to the car, a wet, gray shroud. Every set of headlights in my rearview mirror felt threatening. Every shadow in the mist looked like a gaunt figure in a dark jacket. We didn't talk about it anymore. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound paranoid. We finally pulled into the parking lot of her apartment complex in Virginia Beach. The familiar sight of the brick buildings with their white trim and the tired-looking magnolia trees should have been a relief. It wasn't. The unease had followed us home. I don't want to be alone tonight, Liana said softly as I walked her to her door. Her hand was in mine, her grip tight. You won't be, I said. I had planned to just drop her off and head to my own place, but the thought of driving alone, of walking into my empty apartment, was suddenly unbearable. Inside, she kicked off her sandals by the door. I watched the elegant arch of her bare foot, the red polish on her toes like drops of blood against the pale wood floor. She padded into the kitchen to get a glass of water, and I stood in her living room trying to anchor myself in the normality of it all. The stack of books on her coffee table, the faint smell of her lavender candle, the throw blanket draped over the couch. But my eyes were drawn to the window. Her apartment was on the ground floor, and the blinds were open. The parking lot was poorly lit, pools of darkness gathering between the islands of jaundiced yellow light from the street lamps that I saw movement. In one of those pools of shadow a figure, standing beside a dumpster enclosure, tall, thin, wearing a dark jacket. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Liana," I hissed. She came back into the room, glass in hand. "What?" "Don't come near the window." I moved quickly, pulling the cord to close the blinds. The slats clacked shut, sealing us in. "Ryan, you're scaring me," she said, her voice small. "I saw him, outside." I was breathing heavily like I'd just run a sprint. "The same guy." "That's impossible," she whispered, but she didn't sound convinced. She came to me, pressing herself against my chest, and I held her tightly that I could feel the frantic beat of her heart through her shirt. Or maybe it was mine that I buried my face in her hair, inhaling her scent, trying to use it as a lifeline, but my mind was a whirlwind. How could he be here? It made no sense unless he'd followed us, but I'd been watching the mirrors the whole time that I hadn't seen that car. We ended up on her couch, the TV on for noise, some mindless reality show providing a flickering, colorful distraction. Liana eventually fell into a fitful sleep, her head in my lap that I sat there, stroking her hair, my body rigid with tension. Every creak of the old building, every car that passed outside, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me that I was trapped in a state of hyper-awareness, my senses stretched taut. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. A notification that I picked it up carefully, trying not to disturb Liana. It was a calendar reminder. ***, dentist appointment Dr. Albright ***, October 12, 11:00 a.m. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead that I hadn't set that I'd deleted it after my appointment last week. I was sure of it. I opened my calendar app. The event was there, plain as day. I tapped on it. The details were all correct. The address, the phone number, and in the notes section, which I never used there, was a single line of text. "You flinched." I dropped the phone like it had burned me. It clattered onto the table, waking Liana. What is it?" she mumbled, sitting up groggily. "Nothing," I choked out, my voice rough. "Wrong number. Go back to sleep." But I couldn't. You flinched. During the drilling, when the needle of the anesthetic had gone in, I had jerked. Just a little. Dr. Albright had said, "Easy now," and his assistant had placed a steadying hand on my shoulder. It was a tiny, insignificant moment. No one else could have known. No one. The rest of the night was a long, slow torture of waiting for dawn. I must have dozed off at some point, because I was jolted awake by the sound of Liana's phone ringing. The gray light of morning filtered through the blinds. She answered it, her voice sleepy. "Hello." "Yeah, hi Mom." She listened for a moment, then her expression changed. "What?" "No, that's Are you sure?" I sat up, instantly alert. "What's wrong?" She held up a finger, listening intently. Okay, Mom, just calm down. I'll call you back." She hung up, her face pale. "What happened?" I asked. She got a letter. In the mail yesterday. She just opened it this morning." Liana's eyes were wide with confusion and fear. "It was a photo. Of me, and you, from yesterday. In the car on the bridge." My blood turned to ice. "What?" She said it was taken from outside the car, through the passenger window. "You're driving, and I'm asleep. You can see the bridge railing in the background." Her voice trembled. "Ryan, who would do that? And how?" The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The license plate reader, the staring man, the calendar reminder, the photo. They were connected, a chain of impossibilities pulling tighter and tighter around us. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a glitch. This was targeted. I got up and went to the window, peering through a crack in the blinds. The parking lot was empty in the morning light. No gaunt figures. No bone-colored cars. But the absence felt more threatening than any presence. He was out there. He knew where we lived. He knew things he couldn't possibly know. I spent the day in a fog of paranoia that I called out sick from work. Liana did the same, that we were prisoners in her apartment, jumping at every sound that I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a sophisticated prank? A stalker? But the details, the time of my dentist appointment, the fact that I flinched, defied any rational explanation. It felt less like being stalked by a person and more like being studied by something that operated on a different set of rules, something that could reach into the past and pluck out private moments. The sexual tension between Liana and me, which was usually a warm, constant hum, had curdled into something else. That it was still there, a raw, nervous energy, but now it was tangled up with the fear. That afternoon, we were standing in her kitchen, and she was leaning against the counter, her arms crossed over her chest, the pose pushed her breasts together, and the neckline of her tank top gaped slightly, offering a shadowy glimpse of cleavage. A week ago, that sight would have sent a jolt of pure lust through me. Now, it was a complicated knot of desire and a sickening feeling of vulnerability. That I wanted to touch her, to claim her, to reassure myself that we were both still real, still solid. But the act felt dangerous, like it would make us a target, like it would be observed. I found myself staring at the delicate skin of her throat, at the pulse beating there, and I imagined a hand, a pale, long-fingered hand, reaching out to touch it. The image was so vivid I had to look away. "Stop it," she said quietly. "Stop what?" "Looking at me like that, like you're seeing a ghost over my shoulder." I didn't have an answer for that. Maybe I was. As evening fell, the fear became a physical weight in the room. We ordered food, but neither of us could eat. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the tinny sound from the TV. I was scrolling through my phone, a futile attempt to distract myself, when I opened my photo gallery. And I saw it. A picture I didn't remember taking. It was a close-up, slightly blurry, as if taken quickly. It was a photo of Liana's feet. She was lying on this very couch, her bare feet propped on the armrest. You could see the chipped red polish on her toenails, the fine bones, the way the strap of her sandal had left a faint pink mark on her instep earlier in the day. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't taken this. I would never. I loved her, but taking a covert photo of her feet was a violation, something a stranger would do. A stalker. "Liana," I said, my voice a dry rasp. I showed her the phone. She recoiled, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh God, Ryan, why would you?" "I didn't." The protest sounded weak.